She was taken from her own wedding, not by her groom, by the man her father had stolen $10 million from, Raphael Mancini, Mafia boss, one of the most dangerous men in New York. He walked into her bridal suite, zipped up her wedding dress, threw her over his shoulder, and told her she belonged to him now. She should have hated him. She should have run. Instead, she fell in love with him, and he fell in love with her. When he got down on one knee and asked her to marry him for real, she said no, because she still didn't know if he wanted her, or her father's stolen money. So she gave him everything, the account, the flash drive, the truth, and she walked away. That was 3 months ago. He hasn't called, hasn't texted, hasn't come for her. The man who tracked her every move for 2 years just let her go. Now Angela Fiori is about to do the stupidest thing she's ever done. She's going back to New York, back to him. But right now she's still in Charleston, crying herself to sleep for the 89th night in a row. For the first few weeks, Angela couldn't stop crying. She'd wake up reaching for a body that wasn't there, inhale expecting cedar and danger, and find only the stale air of her Charleston apartment. Miranda held her through the worst of it. Late nights with cheap wine and terrible movies, morning coffees when Angela's eyes were too swollen to face the world alone. Tonight, they sat cross-legged on Miranda's bed, a half-empty pizza box between them. "I don't get it." Miranda set down her slice, studying Angela's face. "You told me you were happy. You said you were in love. So why'd you walk away from him? Why didn't you marry him?" Angela's chest tightened. She picked at a loose thread on the blanket, avoiding her friend's gaze. "I felt like he loved me," she said quietly, "but that money was always hanging over us. His whole reason for finding me in the first place." Her voice cracked. "I couldn't marry him without knowing if what he felt was real, or just a way to eventually get his hands on that account." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "And look what happened. I gave him everything, the flash drive, the account information, all of it." Bitterness crept into her tone. 3 months, Miranda. The man who tracked my every move for years, he hasn't called, hasn't texted, nothing." Miranda's eyes narrowed. She leaned forward, her expression sharpening. "Okay, but you're missing something, babe." Angela looked up. "He can't access that money without you. Your name's on the account." Miranda tilted her head. "And in 3 months he hasn't even tried to get it. Don't you think that's weird?" The words hit like cold water. Angela blinked. "That's true." "Maybe he left you the money," Miranda continued. "Maybe he's waiting for you to come back on your own. Not because you have to, because you want to." Angela worried her bottom lip between her teeth. Hope bloomed where dread had lived, fragile and terrifying. "You really think so?" Miranda threw her hands up. "How would I know? We won't find out sitting here." She paused, a sly smile curling her lips. "Also, have you noticed something weird?" "What?" 3 months, and suddenly every pastry shop in Charleston wants to hire you. High-end places that wouldn't have looked at you twice before." Miranda raised an eyebrow. "How do you explain that?" Angela leaned back against the headboard. "Because I'm good at what I do?" "You're amazing," Miranda agreed. "But getting discovered by everyone at once? That's not luck, Angela. That's someone making calls." Warmth spread through her chest despite herself. She pushed it down. "Speaking of which," Miranda's grin turned wicked, "are you stalking him? What's Raphael up to these days?" Angela laughed, the sound rusty but real. "You think a man like him has Instagram? He's not exactly the type to post selfies, Miranda. Nobody gets close to him." Miranda grabbed the sweatshirt from her pillow and threw it at Angela's face. "Nobody except you, dummy." She bounced on the bed, suddenly electric with energy. "Come on, it's almost Christmas. Let's take a trip to New York. Just for the holidays." Angela's heart stuttered. "You'd come with me?" "Are you kidding?" Miranda was already reaching for her phone. "I've been dying to see the city. And you need to figure out if your Mafia boyfriend still wants you or if I need to key his car." A smile tugged at Angela's lips, despite the anxiety buzzing under her skin. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's go." Nearly 1,000 miles away, Raphael Mancini sat in a private dining room at one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. Across from him, Melissa Simone swirled her champagne. She was all blonde waves and red lipstick, the kind of woman who knew exactly how beautiful she was. "Mr. Mancini." She raised her glass, her smile slow and deliberate. "I'm confident this partnership will be profitable for both of us. Thank you for accepting my invitation." Her heel brushed against his ankle under the table. "Going forward, we'll be working very closely together." Her voice dropped, intimate. "I think we should get to know each other better, warm things up a little." Raphael wasn't listening. His attention had drifted to a table near the window. A young woman with dark hair pulled into a ponytail, athletic clothes, her back turned. In his mind, she turned around, and her face was Angela's. He exhaled slowly, the ache in his chest sharp and familiar. "Mr. Mancini?" He blinked, returning to the present. "The partnership is solid, Melissa." His voice was flat, professional. "But I have other matters to attend to. Going forward, you'll work with my team. They'll handle the day-to-day." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "Unless something critical comes up, there's no need for us to meet directly." He walked away without looking back. Behind him, she tossed her hair over her shoulder, watching him go. "You think you can resist me, handsome?" She smiled to herself. "I always get what I want." The week that followed was a blur of packing, panicking, and second-guessing every decision Angela had ever made. And then, before she could talk herself out of it, she was 30,000 feet in the air, watching the clouds roll by outside her window. The wheels touched down at JFK, and her heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. "What am I doing?" The question screamed in her head. She gripped the armrest as the plane taxied to the gate. Miranda squeezed her other hand. "Breathe, babe. You've got this." But anxiety whispered worst-case scenarios in her head, each one louder than the last. Would he kiss her the moment he saw her? Pull her into his arms and murmur, "You came back to me," against her lips? Or had he already moved on? Maybe he'd found a way to access the money without her. Maybe he didn't need her anymore. Maybe 3 months of silence meant exactly what it looked like. "He's done with you." Angela swallowed hard as the cabin doors opened. Only one way to find out. Their hotel room was nothing special. Clean sheets, a view of a brick wall, and a radiator that clanked every few minutes like it was trying to communicate in Morse code. Angela stood in front of the bathroom mirror, fussing with her hair. The bangs were new. She'd walked into a salon 2 weeks after leaving Raphael, like every heartbroken woman before her, and told the stylist to do something drastic. Now she tugged at them, smoothing them across her forehead, tilting her head left, then right. Will he notice? Will he like them? Heat crept up her neck the moment the thought landed. 3 months of silence, Angela. 3 months of nothing. And you're standing here primping like he's been waiting for you with roses and a romantic song. Her reflection stared back at her, flushed cheeks, anxious eyes. She pressed her lips together, fighting the urge to laugh at herself. Pathetic. She turned away from the mirror before she could spiral further. The cafe sat directly across from Raphael's restaurant, the same building that housed his office upstairs, the same entrance she'd walked through dozens of times back when she was his. Angela wrapped her fingers around her cinnamon roll latte, letting the warmth seep into her palms. December in Manhattan bit harder than Charleston ever did. The cafe windows were fogged at the edges, Christmas lights twinkling in the frost. Miranda huddled deeper into her coat, breath fogging in the air. Her nose had turned pink from the cold. "Okay, explain this to me." She gestured at the restaurant across the street with a mittened hand. "We flew 1,000 miles. His office is right there. We could walk in, knock on his door, and get answers in 5 minutes." She shivered dramatically. "Instead, we're freezing our asses off playing detective. Why?" Angela took a slow sip of her latte. The cinnamon coated her tongue, sweet and familiar. She'd ordered it because it reminded her of the kitchen at Raphael's estate, Warm spices, golden light, Oscar begging for seconds. "I just want to see him first, from a distance." Miranda's eyes rolled so hard, Angela was surprised they didn't get stuck. "Liar." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "You're scared." Which is ridiculous, by the way. The man got down on one knee 3 months ago. She snorted. "What do you think happened? He found a new girlfriend overnight?" The words were meant to be reassuring. They weren't. Angela opened her mouth to respond when movement across the street caught her eye. The restaurant door swung open. Oscar stepped out first, his massive frame unmistakable even from this distance. He scanned the street with practiced ease, another guard flanking him. A laugh escaped Angela before she could stop it, rusty, unexpected. "God, Oscar." She shook her head. "I never thought I'd actually miss that giant teddy bear." Miranda squinted. "That's the bodyguard. He's huge." "He's on a diet. It's a whole thing." And then the door opened again. Angela's breath caught. Raphael. Everything else faded to background noise, the cafe chatter, the traffic, Miranda's voice. Gone. He stepped onto the sidewalk and the world shifted into slow motion. A few strands of dark hair had fallen across his forehead, unusual for him, always so perfectly styled. Even from across the street, the ice blue of his eyes cut through the grey December air like shards of glacier. Light stubble shadowed his jaw, sharp, carved from stone. He looked tired, she realized, just slightly. The kind of tired that lived in the hollows beneath someone's eyes. He wore a charcoal coat, perfectly tailored, fitted across shoulders that seemed broader than she remembered. And that walk, that slow, deliberate stride of a man who owned every room he entered, every street he crossed, every person who dared to look his way. Fire licked through her veins without permission. Her lips tingled, remembering pressure, his mouth on hers. The way he'd held her face in his hands like she was something precious, something breakable, something his. She could almost smell him from here, cedar and something darker, danger, maybe. Or want. "God," she breathed, barely audible. "I missed him so much." Miranda elbowed her hard. "Your man walks around looking like he just stepped off a magazine cover." She whistled low. "That jawline should be illegal. And the way he carries himself. Damn, Angela." Angela's fingers tightened around her cup. Her body was already moving, rising from the chair, ready to cross the street and what? Throw herself at him? Demand answers? Her heart hammered against her ribs as she took one step toward the curb, then another. Raphael stood by the black SUV speaking with Oscar, close enough to call out to, close enough to touch if she just... The restaurant door opened a third time. A woman emerged, tall, blonde waves cascading over her shoulders, red lipstick so bold it practically glowed from across the street. She walked like a runway model, despite the near-freezing temperature, mini skirt, long legs, sheer stockings, stilettos that clicked against the pavement. She smiled wide as she approached Raphael, and then she touched his arm. Angela's stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. "Oh." Miranda's voice came from far away. "Angela, who is that?" Pressure built behind Angela's eyes. Her throat tightened around words she couldn't speak. The blonde leaned closer to Raphael, said something that made her laugh, tossed her hair over her shoulder. And Raphael opened the car door for her. She slid inside like she belonged there. Angela spun on her heel so fast she nearly knocked over her chair. She dropped back into her seat, facing away from the street, her hands shaking around her cup. But she couldn't stop herself from looking over her shoulder. The SUV pulled away from the curb, and with it went every ounce of hope she'd carried across 1,000 miles. "Stupid. You're so stupid. Miranda was joking about him finding someone new, and you actually believed he was waiting for you." Tears blurred her vision before she could stop them. She blinked hard, forcing them back, but the damage was done. Something hollow opened up in her chest, vast and aching. Miranda reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Hey, we don't know anything yet. That could be anyone, a business partner, a cousin, a... Did you see the way she touched him? Angela's voice cracked. The way she got in his car? Miranda fell silent. The snow began to drift down around them, soft, delicate flakes that landed on Angela's lashes and melted into nothing. Just like her hope. Inside the car, Raphael stared out the window. Melissa's perfume had already filled the entire vehicle, something heavy and floral that pressed against his lungs like a physical weight. He cracked the window an inch, letting the cold air slice through the cloying sweetness. And I really think if we restructure the distribution channels, we could see a 15% increase in... Raphael raised his hand. Melissa stopped mid-sentence. I've told you before. His voice was flat, controlled. Unless it's critical, these conversations go through my team. I don't have time for operational details. He turned to look at her, his expression carefully blank. Tell Oscar where to drop you off. Melissa's smile faltered for half a second before recovering. She shifted closer, her hand landing on his thigh. You know what I think? Her voice dropped to something she probably thought was seductive. You need a break. Step away from all this pressure. Have a drink with someone who actually enjoys your company. In the front seat, Oscar's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. His nose wrinkled like he'd smelled something rotten. The man had zero poker face when it came to women who weren't Angela. Raphael removed her hand from his leg, gently, deliberately, like he was handling something mildly unpleasant. That's a generous offer. Not a trace of warmth in his tone, but unnecessary. I prefer to keep our partnership strictly professional. Melissa's smile flickered. Just for a moment, something cold flashed behind her eyes, the briefest glimpse of the calculation beneath the charm. The car slowed. Melissa gathered her bag, her smile too bright, too fixed. Another time, then. She stepped out onto the curb, then leaned back through the door. I have some exciting new ideas for our future collaboration. I'm sure you'll want to hear them. Raphael looked at her through the open window, his expression bored. Happy holidays, Melissa. The door closed. The car pulled away. Oscar waited until they'd turned the corner before speaking. Boss. His voice was strange, barely contained. Raphael pinched the bridge of his nose. Oscar, I'm exhausted. Whatever it is, you're gonna want to hear this. Something in his tone made Raphael look up. Oscar was grinning, all 32 teeth. Got word from our guy at the Charleston airport this morning. He could barely contain himself. Angela Fiori boarded a flight to New York. She landed about 2 hours ago. The world went very still. Raphael's hand froze on his knee. His jaw tightened. For 3 months, he'd been waiting, watching from a distance, making calls to every bakery in Charleston that might hire her, staying away because she'd asked him to, because she'd given him everything and walked away, and he'd wanted her to choose him freely, not because she had to. 3 months of discipline, 3 months of restraint. And now, she's here? The words came out rough, uneven, almost vulnerable. In the city, right now. A beat of silence. Then, slowly, like sunrise breaking through clouds, that faint signature smile curved Raphael's lips, the one that made him look almost human, almost soft. Oscar practically bounced in his seat, the car swerving slightly. You think she's waiting at the house? Maybe she went straight there to surprise you? Raphael's smile deepened, something warm flickering behind those cold eyes, something that hadn't been there in months. The Angela I know wouldn't do that. He paused, his gaze drifting to the window. Snow was beginning to fall, soft, delicate flakes drifting past the glass. But let's hope I'm wrong. His voice sharpened. Back to business. Back to control. Contact everyone. I want to know where she is within the hour. On it, boss. Oscar was already dialing. The car accelerated into traffic. Behind them, still standing on the curb, Melissa waved at the retreating vehicle. Nobody noticed. Raphael was too busy watching the first snow of the season drift past the window. quiet, unhurried, like the city itself was holding its breath. She came back. My little dove came back. His fingers drummed once against his knee, restless, impatient. For the first time in 3 months, Raphael Mancini felt something other than empty. Angela's pizza sat untouched, cold, congealing. Miranda leaned across the table, her voice gentle but insistent. "Come on, Angela, don't jump to the worst conclusion." She ticked off her fingers. "He's handsome, rich, powerful, sexy as hell." She caught Angela's glare and winced. "Sorry, but my point is, of course there's going to be women around him. That doesn't mean anything." Angela said nothing. Her throat felt too tight to speak. Miranda's tone shifted. "Okay, fine. You know what? Every guy with a hot woman nearby thinks about sleeping with her first. It's just biology." She shrugged. "But forget him. Seriously." She straightened up, a new energy in her voice. "This is our first real trip together." "It's almost New Year's. We're in freaking New York City," she grinned. "Sure, we're on a tight budget, but that doesn't mean we can't have fun." Before Angela could protest, Miranda had her phone out, dialing. "Hey, Patrick, how's it going?" Her voice turned bright, flirty. "Listen, I'm in the city with a friend. What's good tonight? Where should we go?" Angela's eyes went wide. She waved her hands frantically, mouthing, "No, no, no." Miranda ignored her completely. "Oh, you guys want to come too? Perfect." She winked at Angela. "See you there." She hung up and grabbed Angela's arm. "Let's get out of this depressing pizza joint and find somewhere we can actually let loose." She tugged Angela toward the door. "We didn't fly 1,000 miles to cry into cold cheese." The club was nothing like the places Raphael had taken her. No velvet ropes, no private tables, no whispered respect when the owner walked in. Just flashing lights, thumping electronic beats, and bodies grinding on a sticky dance floor. The air smelled like cheap vodka and desperation. Angela wrinkled her nose. "Miranda, what are we doing here? Girls just want to have fun, Angela." Miranda grabbed her shoulders. "That's the vibe tonight, okay? No crying, no moping, just fun." Patrick and Tom were waiting at the bar. Patrick was tall, sandy-haired, with an easy smile that probably worked on most women. Miranda threw her arms around him. "Angela, this is Patrick. We went to college together. He's a total sweetheart." Patrick's gaze landed on Angela, and his smile widened. "Miranda," he shook his head slowly, "you never told me you had such a gorgeous friend." Angela forced a tight smile. "Nice to meet you." She turned to the bartender before Patrick could say anything else. "Tequila, straight." The first shot burned going down. The second was easier. By the third, the edges of the world had started to blur. "No one here to tell me how much tequila goes in my margarita." She lifted the fourth glass. "Here's to you, Raphael Mancini. You bastard." The tequila hit her tongue like liquid fire. "Said you loved me, said you wanted me, said I'm yours, forever. Couldn't wait to throw yourself at some blonde the second I was gone." Fifth shot. The room tilted. Miranda had disappeared onto the dance floor with Tom, laughing, carefree. Angela gripped the bar for balance. A hand settled on her waist. "Hey." Patrick's voice was warm, close to her ear. "Wanna dance?" Angela pushed his hand away. "Look, you seem like a nice guy, but I hate men right now, all of them, so back off." Patrick chuckled, unbothered. "Maybe you just haven't met the right one yet." A bitter laugh tore out of her. "The right one?" She spun to face him, swaying slightly. "I met him, the realest man I've ever known. And you know what I learned? They're all the same. Every single one." Patrick stepped closer. "Come on, don't put us all in the same box." His fingers brushed her bangs aside, tucking them behind her ear. "Give me a chance. Let me show you how happy I could make you." His hand drifted down to her shoulder, her neck. Suddenly, a voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Get your hands off my girl." Patrick froze. Angela's head snapped up. Raphael stood behind Patrick, Oscar looming at his shoulder like a mountain. Those ice-blue eyes were fixed on Patrick's hand, still touching Angela's skin, with the kind of cold fury that made men disappear. Patrick turned slowly. His face went pale. "So this is your real man?" He looked back at Angela. "The one you said wasn't real?" Angela's brain short-circuited. The tequila, the shock, Raphael's face. "Oh," she breathed. "Raphael." Raphael's fist connected with Patrick's jaw before she could finish. Patrick stumbled back, catching himself on the bar. He held up his hands in surrender and backed away, smart enough to know when he was outmatched. Raphael didn't watch him go. He was already scooping Angela into his arms, lifting her like she weighed nothing. "Hey," she squirmed weakly. "What are you? Put me down." He carried her through the crowd, out the door, into the cold night air. A black SUV idled at the curb. Oscar held the door open. Raphael deposited her in the back seat and slid in beside her. The door closed. The world went quiet. Angela's head was spinning. "How did you find me?" Her words slurred together. "Were you following me? Shouldn't you be wrapped up in your blonde girlfriend's arms right now?" That faint, infuriating smile curved his lips. "Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing." Fury spiked through the fog in her brain. She slapped him, hard. In the front seat, Oscar's eyebrows shot up. He muttered something under his breath that sounded like, "Here we go." "You don't get to do this." Angela's voice shook. "You can't just show up and drag me out like you own me. You can't keep kidnapping me whenever you feel like it." Tears burned behind her eyes. "I hate you." Raphael didn't flinch. He pulled her onto his lap. "Why are you here instead of our home, little dove?" His voice was low, quiet, dangerous. "And why did you drink so much?" "Because I hate you," she whispered. But the words came out broken, slurred. The tequila and the exhaustion and the heartbreak crashed into her all at once. Her eyes fluttered closed. She slumped against his chest, unconscious. The SUV pulled away from the curb. Raphael looked down at the woman in his arms. Her breathing had gone soft and even. Peaceful, finally. His fingers combed gently through her hair. "You're going to tell me you came back for me, little dove." His voice was barely a whisper. "You're not getting away from me that easily." Outside the window, snow drifted through the city lights. And for the first time in 3 months, Raphael Mancini held something worth keeping. Angela woke to the feeling of silk against her skin, disoriented for a moment before recognition slammed into her like a wave. This ceiling, this bed, this scent, cedar and something darker, clinging to the pillow beneath her cheek. She knew this room, Raphael's bedroom. Her eyes flew open. The same four-poster bed, the same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the manicured gardens below. She was back. The events of last night came flooding back in fragments. The club, the tequila, Patrick's hands on her neck, Raphael appearing like an avenging angel and punching Patrick square in the jaw, the car ride home, the slap she'd given him, and then nothing but darkness. She looked down at herself, and her stomach dropped. She was wearing nothing but her underwear. Fury spiked through her chest. That controlling, arrogant, but something else bloomed beneath the anger, something softer. He found me. He came for me. He brought me here. A smile tugged at her mouth before she could stop it. Maybe he still loves me. She pushed the thought away and found a silk robe in the closet, padding barefoot down the staircase. Maria spotted her first, rushing forward with a tight embrace that smelled like flower and rosemary. "Angela! We missed you so much. This house hasn't been the same without you." Angela hugged her back, something loosening in her chest at the familiar warmth. "Maria, where are my clothes? My bag? My phone? Mr. Mancini sent your dress to the dry cleaner." Maria's brow furrowed. "Your bag? I haven't seen it." Angela's jaw tightened. "And where is he?" "Not here. He left early this morning." Of course, 3 months apart and nothing had changed. Still controlling everything, still making decisions for her. She turned toward the front door. "I'm leaving, just like this if I have to." Her hand closed around the doorknob. She pulled it open and found Raphael standing on the other side. Ice-blue eyes locked onto hers, that infuriating smile playing at his lips. "Going somewhere, little dove? You can't keep me prisoner in your house again." The words exploded out of her. Raphael stepped inside, closing the door behind him, and in one fluid motion had her pressed against the wall, not roughly, but firmly. His hands traced up her neck, her shoulders, leaving fire in their wake. "After 3 months." His voice was low, his lips hovering inches from hers. "These are the first words you say to me? Although, if we're counting what you said last night, 'I hate you' was particularly memorable." Her breath caught in her throat, heart hammering against her ribs. The front door swung open behind them, and Oscar stepped inside only to freeze mid-stride when he caught sight of them pressed together against the wall. His eyebrows shot up. He spun on his heels so fast he nearly tripped. "Didn't see anything," he called over his shoulder. "Not a thing. Carry on." As he retreated toward the kitchen, Angela caught him mumbling, "Maybe I should pin Maria against a wall like that. If it works for the boss, it might work for me too." Raphael scooped her up and carried her up the stairs before she could react. "Put me down!" Angela squirmed in his grip. "Are you still having me followed? How did you even know I was in the city?" She smacked his chest. "You narcissist! You actually think I came back for you?" He kicked the bedroom door open, dropped her onto the mattress and kissed her, deep and demanding, 3 months of hunger packed into a single moment. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark. "You talk too much, Angela. You didn't used to be like this." That faint smile curved the corner of his lips. "You must have been saving up a lot to tell me." His mouth moved to her jaw, her neck, the hollow of her throat. Angela's back arched involuntarily, fingers curling into the sheets. He paused at her hairline, brushing the new bangs aside with gentle fingers. "These look good on you." Her lip caught between her teeth. For 3 months, she'd dreamed of this, being back in his arms, his mouth on her skin. But the anger hadn't faded completely. She shoved him back and scrambled off the bed, putting distance between them. "I came on vacation with my friend. Not everything has to be about you, Raphael Mancini." He sat up slowly, watching her with heat and something softer, admiration maybe. "But for me," he said quietly, "everything is about you, little dove." Silence stretched between them for a moment before he spoke again. "Are you happy with your life in Charleston?" Angela shrugged, forcing casualness. "Very happy. I'm free. I have a good job at a pastry shop." She paused, letting the next words land like a weapon. "I've been dating, doing everything a woman my age should be doing." Raphael rose from the bed, his eyes narrowing. "Dating?" He moved toward her, slow and deliberate. Angela stepped back until her spine hit the wall. Raphael's body pressed against hers. "Yes," she whispered. "I've forgotten all about you. I'm meeting other people." He kissed her. Her moan betrayed her instantly. "Then why?" he murmured against her lips. "Are you trembling like a leaf at my touch?" The words snapped something inside her, the humiliation of being so easily read, so easily undone. "You arrogant man!" She shoved both hands against his chest, hard enough to make him step back, and ducked under his arm before he could pull her close again. "I'm sure you've moved on too. 3 months without a single call really showed me how serious that proposal was." Raphael turned, that infuriating smile back. "Were you watching me outside the restaurant last night?" Her cheeks flushed. "The woman you saw is Melissa. I invested in her restaurant chain. Strictly business." He tilted his head. "I'm not interested in her. I wasn't wondering." That faint smile curved the corner of his lips, the one that made her want to slap him and kiss him in equal measure. "Liar." His hips pinned her harder against the wall as his hands traveled up, fingers threading into her hair before cradling her face. "I missed you, Angela. Every single day." His thumbs stroked her cheekbones. "But you need to understand something. You asked me to let you go, so I did. I gave you your freedom, and I waited for you to choose me within that freedom. Her lips parted, but no words came out, because for once she had nothing to argue with. If I'd called, if I'd shown up at your door, you never would have known if you really wanted me, or if you just felt trapped. His forehead touched hers. So tell me, why are you here? Did you miss me? He kissed her before she could answer, deeper, more desperate. Tell me you missed me as much as I missed you. Another kiss. Tell me you still want me the way I want you. His hands moved down her body. His lips found her neck, her collarbone. No woman could ever hold a candle to you, he breathed against her skin. You're the only one in my head, the only one I want. Angela's mind went blank. Her body had already surrendered, had been surrendering since the moment she saw him outside that club. Tell me you came back for me. His voice was raw, broken. Tell me you're mine. Instead of answering, she wrapped her arms around his neck. He lifted her off the wall in one smooth motion, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the bed. And finally, she stopped fighting. Their moans filled the room as 3 months of longing found release. His hands explored every curve, while her body surrendered to his touch, to his whispered promises, to the overwhelming rightness of being exactly where she was meant to be. 2 hours later, Raphael was buttoning his shirt while Angela lay tangled in the sheets. Leaving you today is going to be difficult. He pressed a kiss to her bare shoulder. But I have 2 meetings I can't miss. Call your friend. My guys are waiting outside your hotel to bring her here. Angela sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. You never actually let me go, did you? Raphael kissed her forehead. You're wrong. I did let you go. I just watched from a distance. He shrugged. Those are 2 different things. An hour later, Miranda arrived. Her whistle echoed through the foyer as she spun in a slow circle, taking in the marble floors and sweeping staircase. Jesus, Angela, this is a mansion, an actual mansion. She turned back with a wicked grin. So, what exactly did you 2 do last night? Oscar appeared with Miranda's suitcase, all 32 teeth on display. Welcome, Miss Miranda. If you're hungry, Maria can prepare something. From the kitchen doorway, Maria glared at Oscar, muttering something sharp in Italian. Angela leaned close to Oscar's ear. You still haven't told her? Look, she's jealous. Oscar's grin softened. Actually, I told her. That night after you left for Charleston, we're together now. Kind of like a couple, actually. Oscar! Maria's voice cracked like a whip. Come here, now! I mean, he was already backing toward the kitchen. We're sort of together. It's complicated. He disappeared around the corner. Miranda burst out laughing. This place is actually fun, Angela. I was expecting some creepy Mafia dungeon. Across town, the meeting wasn't going as smoothly. The private room was smaller than Raphael preferred, intimate and suffocating, the kind of space where men said things they couldn't take back. Oscar stood at his shoulder, all 6'5" of barely contained violence, and the Alessi family's guards kept glancing at him nervously, exactly the reaction Raphael wanted. Roman Alessi sat across the table, silver hair swept back from a face with cold eyes and a smile that never reached anywhere real. So you're not getting into the shipping business. Roman's tone was casual. Is that right, Mancini? You know my answer, Roman. Nightclubs, restaurants, that's my territory. Ports and cargo ships, that's not the path I'm taking. Roman's smile thinned. Your father would have thought differently. Raphael's jaw tightened. I'm not my father. Roman leaned forward. Changing your family's direction is bold, but leaving this table without an agreement, that carries risk. Raphael stood. I know how to handle risk. He was halfway to the door when Roman spoke again. By the way, the words came soft, almost casual. Do you remember David Fiori? Raphael froze, his hand stopping on the door handle. I always thought he was nobody. A small man, unimportant. Roman's voice dripped with false innocence. But it turns out he had a daughter. The silence was deafening. Angela Fiori. Raphael turned slowly. Roman's eyes glittered. But you already knew that, didn't you? The car door slammed shut behind Raphael, and Oscar glanced at him through the rearview mirror with the kind of caution reserved for approaching a wounded predator. A muscle twitched beneath Raphael's left eye, the only tell he allowed himself when control was slipping. "This is serious, boss." Oscar's voice was low, measured. "He threatened us, directly, in a room full of witnesses." Raphael didn't respond, his jaw locked tight enough to crack teeth as he pulled out his phone and dialed Angela's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail. "Pick up, little dove, pick up!" Her recorded voice filled the silence, cheerful and oblivious, and something cold settled in his chest. He tried again, watching Manhattan blur past, while the phone rang endlessly before cutting to voicemail once more. "Oscar!" His voice came out quiet, too quiet, the kind of calm that preceded storms. "Roman's next move will be Angela. We need eyes on her around the clock, starting now." Oscar nodded, but his brow furrowed with the question Raphael had been dreading. "How does he know about the money, boss? That information was buried deep." Raphael exhaled slowly, forcing his fists to unclench. "Roman controls half the underground finance networks in the Western Hemisphere, Cayman, Panama, Switzerland. Money that size leaves traces, even when it's sitting still." He turned to look out the window, his reflection staring back like an accusation. "The funds haven't moved in 2 years. Haven't been transferred, laundered, or spent. That kind of dormancy draws attention." And it led them straight to her, just like it led me. The realization hit him like a blade between the ribs. "I brought her here." The words tasted like ash. "I exposed her by bringing her back into my world." Cazzo. The Italian curse slipped out before he could stop it, sharp and vicious. Oscar's phone buzzed, and he checked the screen before meeting Raphael's eyes in the mirror. "Boss, Angela's at the Metropolitan Museum. 2 of our guys have been tailing her since she left." Raphael's hand was already on the door handle. "We're going there. Now!" The crisp December air bit at Angela's cheeks as she and Miranda descended the museum's grand steps, arms linked together like schoolgirls sharing secrets. Miranda hadn't stopped talking since they'd left the Egyptian wing, her enthusiasm infectious despite Angela's lingering exhaustion from last night. Or rather, this morning. "I mean, seriously, Angie." Miranda squeezed her arm, eyes still wide with wonder. "That temple was inside a building, an entire ancient Egyptian temple just sitting there like it belonged in Manhattan." Angela laughed, shaking her head. "It was donated. The Egyptian government—" "Donated?" Miranda snorted, pulling her closer as they reached the sidewalk. "Please! Some people moved to New York for opportunity. The Denda temple was straight up kidnapped." Laughter bubbled up from Angela's chest, light and genuine, the first real joy she'd felt in months. The laughter died in her throat when 3 black SUVs pulled up to the curb in perfect formation. Doors opened in synchronized motion, and 5 men in dark suits emerged, their gazes fixed on Angela as they began walking toward her with predatory purpose. Miranda's grip on her arm tightened, her smile fading into confusion. "Angie, are those Raphael's guys? Why are there so many of them coming at us like that?" Dread settled in Angela's stomach like a stone, cold and heavy. "Raphael wouldn't do this." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "He'd never draw this much attention in public." 2 more SUVs screeched to a halt behind the first 3, and Angela's heart slammed against her ribs until she saw who stepped out. Raphael emerged first, Oscar unfolding from behind him along with 2 more of his men, and relief crashed through her like a wave breaking against rocks. But something was wrong. Oscar and the other 2 guards walked toward the first group of men with deliberate strides, hands resting casually on the weapons at their hips, while Raphael moved directly toward Angela with a singular focus that made her breath catch. His face was carved from granite, jaw tight, eyes burning with something she'd never seen before. Worry and darkness intertwined, the look of a man who'd glimpsed something terrifying and was trying to outrun it. "Raphael, what's happening?" The words died as his hand closed around her arm, firm but not painful, and he was already pulling her toward his waiting car before she could finish the question. Behind them, Oscar positioned himself directly in front of the other group's leader, a dark-haired man with a cruel mouth who looked ready to draw his weapon. Oscar's grin was all teeth, sharp and dangerous. "We're always faster than you, Rocco. Don't ever forget that." Rocco Alessi's jaw tightened, humiliation flickering across his features. "Next time won't be like this, Oscar. Keep telling yourself that." Oscar winked, backing toward Raphael's SUV without turning his back on the threat. The Alessi men retreated to their vehicles, engines roaring as they peeled away from the curb. Rocco pulled out his phone, pressing it to his ear with white-knuckled fingers. "We lost her this time, brother. Mancini's men got there first." Inside the car, Angela found herself pressed against Raphael's side, her fingers wrapped around his forearm like an anchor in a storm she didn't understand. Miranda sat across from them, her face pale and bewildered, all traces of laughter gone. "What the hell just happened out there?" Angela's voice trembled despite her best efforts to steady it. Raphael's expression remained carved from stone, his gaze fixed on the window, but his hand moved to cover hers, warm, solid, grounding. "There are things we need to discuss when we get home, Angela." His voice was quiet, controlled, carrying the weight of something he wasn't ready to say out loud. Then his ice-blue eyes shifted to Miranda, and the message was unmistakable. Alone. The study felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in as Angela stood across from Raphael, with anxiety buzzing beneath her skin like a swarm of bees. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed over his chest, watching her with those ice-blue eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense she'd ever built. "We need to go to the Cayman Islands." His voice was calm, measured, the voice of a man who'd already made up his mind. "The money your father left. We have to retrieve it from the account." The words hit her like ice water flooding her veins. There it is, the thing I've been dreading since the beginning. Her face must have betrayed her because something flickered in his expression, concern maybe, or frustration. Angela's teeth found her bottom lip, worrying the soft flesh as years of buried fear clawed their way to the surface. "It's all about the money, isn't it?" The accusation slipped out before she could stop it. "Bringing me back here. This whole thing. It was always about recovering what my father stole from you." The change in Raphael was instantaneous. His eyes narrowed to dangerous slits, and something cold and sharp replaced the calm she'd grown accustomed to. Angela instinctively stepped back, her heart slamming against her ribs as she glimpsed the Mafia boss beneath the lover she'd come to know. "How dare you say that to me?" His voice dropped to something quiet and lethal, more frightening than any shout. "If I wanted that money, Angela, do you think I couldn't have taken it from you by now? Do you really think you could have stopped me?" She flinched, shame heating her cheeks. He pushed off from the desk and moved toward her with predatory grace, each step deliberate. "This isn't about money. It never was." He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. "This is about your safety, about keeping you alive." But Angela couldn't hear anything beyond the roar of her own panic, the fear that had lived inside her chest since the day she'd discovered that flash drive hidden among her father's belongings. Emotion choked her throat, making rational thought impossible. She moved toward him, closing the remaining distance, her voice cracking with vulnerability she couldn't hide. "Did you ever really love me? I need to know, because sometimes I wonder if any of this was real, or if I was just a means to an end." Something cracked behind Raphael's ice-blue eyes. Pain, maybe, or wounded pride. His hands shot out, gripping her waist and pulling her flush against his chest so suddenly that a gasp escaped her lips. "I loved you more than I've ever loved anything in my entire life." The words were rough, raw, stripped of all his usual control. "But right now, we don't have the luxury of romance. Right now, we need to focus on survival." His tone shifted, growing darker, heavier, with things he didn't want to say. "That money is sitting in an account with your name on it." His grip on her waist tightened. "As long as it stays there, you're a target. A walking bullseye for every enemy I've ever made." Angela's breath came shallow and quick as the reality of her situation crystallized with terrifying clarity. "Those men at the museum today." Raphael's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking beneath the skin. "Do you know who they were? They work for Roman Alessi, a man who knows exactly what your father stole from me. And now they've seen me refuse to bow to Roman's demands." He released one hand from her waist to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with unexpected tenderness. "As long as that money sits untouched in the Caymans, you remain my weakness, the one thing my enemies can use to destroy me." His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. "And I will never let anyone hurt you. Never." Angela's voice trembled, barely audible. "Were they going to kidnap me?" The silence that followed stretched like a blade across her throat. "Yes." The single word carried the weight of a confession. "I made it in time today. Oscar and the men got there before Rocco could grab you." His forehead dropped to rest against hers, and she felt him exhale, a shaky breath that revealed more vulnerability than any words could. "But what happens if one day I don't make it in time? What happens if I'm too late?" He wrapped his arms around her completely, pulling her into an embrace that felt like shelter from a storm she couldn't see coming. His lips pressed against her forehead, soft and reverent, then found her mouth in a kiss that tasted like desperation and promise intertwined. When they finally broke apart, Angela's whisper ghosted against his lips. "If you could get me out of this, if the solution was this simple all along, why didn't you do it before?" Raphael pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, and she saw something raw and unguarded in his expression, the look of a man who'd calculated every possible outcome and still ended up here. "Because then I would have lost you." His thumb traced her jaw. "If I'd forced you to give up that money, if I'd threatened you or manipulated you into handing it over, you never would have trusted me. You would have left, and I would have had to let you go." He paused, his jaw working. "And I couldn't foresee Roman Alessi deciding to use you as a weapon against me. That was my mistake, my failure." The vulnerability in his voice made her chest ache. He stepped back, and she watched the mask slide back into place, the cold, controlled Mafia boss returning to take command. But there was something different in his eyes now, something fierce and unshakable. "Never question my love for you again, Angela." His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "When this is over, when we've eliminated this threat and neutralized Roman's leverage, I'm putting that ring back on your finger, the one you rejected." That faint smile curved the corner of his lips, but his eyes remained deadly serious. "You're going to be my wife. That's not a request." Angela opened her mouth to respond, but he was already moving toward the door. The decision made, the conversation closed. "But first, Cayman Islands." He glanced back at her over his shoulder. "Tomorrow morning. Pack light." The commercial flight felt strange, cramped and anonymous in a way that Raphael's private jet never had been. The jet would be too easy to track, he'd explained that morning as they packed. Roman has eyes everywhere. Commercial airlines, fake names, cash transactions. That's how we disappear. Angela glanced down at the passport in her hand. The photo was hers, but the name printed beneath it made her pause. Monica Gibson. "How did you even get this?" She flipped it over, examining the details. "I thought this stuff only happened in movies." Raphael's lips curved into that familiar half-smile. "Oscar handled it." "Oscar picked my name?" "He's a Monica Bellucci fan." Raphael shrugged, that hint of amusement still playing at his lips. "Figures." Angela let out a short laugh. "So a guy with a celebrity crush picked my fake identity. Great." She shook her head. "Next time I'm choosing my own alias." "There won't be a next time." Raphael's voice dropped, serious now. "Once we withdraw the money, Roman will know. These identities buy us a few days, nothing more." Angela watched him from her window seat as he settled into the narrow space beside her, his long legs barely fitting in the economy-class legroom, no Oscar shadowing his every move, no black SUVs waiting on the tarmac, no tailored suit, no gold cufflinks, no air of untouchable power. Instead, he wore a simple white linen shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, and dark jeans that made him look almost normal. Like someone I might have met in a coffee shop, someone without blood on his hands and enemies at every corner. Georgetown welcomed them with salt air and blazing Caribbean sunshine, a world away from the steel and glass towers of Manhattan. Their hotel was modest by Mancini standards, clean and comfortable, but the kind of place that wouldn't attract attention. No penthouse suite, no private staff, just a simple room with a ceiling fan that wobbled slightly and curtains that billowed in the warm breeze. Angela set down her small carry-on and turned to find Raphael studying her with an unreadable expression. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing." But that faint smile played at the corner of his lips again. "I'm just watching you adjust to this version of me." She laughed despite herself. "It's strange, seeing you without the whole production." "We go to the bank tomorrow morning." He moved to the window, gazing out at the palm-lined street below. "Tonight we lay low, blend in." The restaurant sat on a wooden deck overlooking the water, strings of light swaying gently in the evening breeze as the sun melted into the Caribbean horizon. Angela couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this light, this free from the weight of fear and uncertainty that had defined her life for the past 2 years. Fresh seafood covered the table between them, grilled mahi-mahi, coconut shrimp, plantains fried golden and crispy. The wine was local and sweet, and somewhere nearby someone was playing steel drums. She looked across the table at Raphael, watching the way the candlelight softened the hard angles of his face, and something warm bloomed in her chest. "I think I liked this version of you," she admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. "This more modest version, without the guards and the suits and the private jets." She gestured vaguely at their surroundings. "You seem almost normal." Raphael chuckled, the sound low and rich as he poured more wine into her glass. That faint smile curved his lips, the one that still made her stomach flutter despite everything. "I am normal, Angela." He set down the bottle and met her gaze. "This is my family's business. I was born into it. I didn't choose it. But I've created my own way of operating within it." He paused, swirling the wine in his glass. "I try to keep things as legal and as safe as possible. But the bigger your success, the bigger the target on your back." His hand reached across the table to cover hers, warm and grounding. "When your wealth grows, people start seeing you as competition. They want power. They want to make you kneel." His thumb traced circles on her knuckles. "That's human nature. Greed, envy, the hunger for control." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to something intimate despite the public setting. "But at my core, I'm just a man who wants a normal life, a wife, a family." His ice-blue eyes held hers with unmistakable intensity. "I want that with you, Angela. Everything else, the empire, the money, the power, it means nothing if I don't have you beside me." Angela's throat tightened with emotion she couldn't name. She turned to look out at the water, the lights of distant boats twinkling against the darkening sky. "This place is beautiful. It's hard to imagine my father ever being here." She paused, brow furrowing with the questions she'd carried for years. How did he disappear so completely? How did he manage to steal that money and vanish without leaving a single trace for you to follow? Raphael's expression grew thoughtful, and he released her hand to lean back in his chair. "In our world, disappearing is possible, if you know the right people and you plan carefully." He took a sip of wine. "Your father spent 20 years embedded in the financial side of this life. He controlled the money for some of the most powerful families on the East Coast. That gave him connections, leverage, knowledge that most people never acquire." He set down his glass, his gaze distant. "Being the man who controls the money is both the most dangerous and the most prestigious position you can hold. Everyone needs you. Everyone trusts you with their secrets." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "And if you're smart enough, patient enough, You can use that position to build an escape route that no one sees coming. Angela's chest ached with conflicting emotions. Grief for the father she'd lost, anger at the man who'd put her in this position, confusion at trying to reconcile the two. So he knew how to get out, she murmured. He spent years planning his exit, and when he finally made his move, she trailed off, staring at her untouched wine. He tried to pay his debt to me by stealing from you. Like that somehow made us even. When she looked up, there was a strange light in Raphael's eyes, something that looked almost like respect. He nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. I love you, Angela. The words were simple, direct, stripped of all pretense. And there is nothing I wouldn't do to protect you. Nothing. The steel drums played on as the Caribbean night wrapped around them like a promise, and for one perfect moment, the weight of everything they'd left behind in New York seemed to dissolve into the warm, salt air. Tomorrow, they would face the bank and the truth of her father's legacy. But tonight, they were just two people sharing a meal by the water, pretending the world outside didn't exist. The bank sat behind an unmarked door on a quiet side street. No signs, no logos, nothing to announce what happened inside. Angela's fingers were intertwined with Raphael's as they approached the private banking desk, and she found herself gripping tighter than necessary, her palm growing slick against his. Her stomach clenched with the weight of what was about to happen. This is it, the moment I've been dreading for 2 years. A middle-aged man in an impeccable grey suit rose to greet them, his smile professional and practiced. Mr. and Mrs. Mancini, Raphael said smoothly. We have an appointment regarding the Fiori account. The banker's eyebrows lifted almost imperceptibly as he gestured toward a private office. Of course. Please, follow me. Inside the glass-walled room, Angela presented her identification, passport, birth certificate, the documents Raphael had helped her gather before they'd left New York. The banker examined each one with meticulous care, comparing signatures, checking photographs, verifying every detail. Finally, he turned to his computer screen, typed in a series of codes, and went very still. When he looked up, his expression had shifted from professional courtesy to something approaching reverence. Miss Angela Fiori. His voice dropped to something more discreet. Your account currently holds 10 million United States dollars. He folded his hands on the desk, his gaze flickering between her and Raphael. What would you like to do with these funds? Angela opened her mouth to respond, but Raphael spoke first, his voice calm and assured. 4 million will be transferred to Teach for America. He pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket and slid it across the desk. Here are the account details and routing numbers. Angela's head snapped toward him, confusion rippling through her chest. Raphael continued without looking at her, his attention fixed on the banker. Another 4 million will go to Habitat for Humanity. Same documentation is attached. What is he doing? A slow smile began to spread across Angela's lips as understanding dawned, warmth blooming behind her ribs like the first rays of sunrise breaking through clouds. The remaining 2 million, Raphael said, finally turning to meet her eyes, will be deposited into the Fiori Education Foundation account. He produced a third document. This is the account number. The banker studied the paperwork, then raised his gaze to Angela with professional detachment that couldn't quite mask his curiosity. Ma'am, do you authorize these transfers? Angela didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to Raphael, cupped his face in both hands, and kissed him, soft and deep, and full of everything she couldn't put into words. When she pulled back, his ice-blue eyes were warm in a way she'd rarely seen, that faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. She turned to the banker, her voice steady and certain. I authorize them with my whole heart. The Georgetown sun blazed overhead as they stepped out of the bank and onto the palm-lined street, the weight of $10 million and 2 years of fear lifted from Angela's shoulders. Across the road, a Christmas tree wrapped in silver tinsel stood beneath the palm trees, its decorations glinting absurdly in the tropical heat. A few feet away, someone had built a snowman out of sand, complete with a Santa hat and sunglasses. Angela laughed at the sight, shaking her head. Christmas in the Caribbean, nothing about her life made sense anymore. They walked hand in hand for half a block before she stopped abruptly, tugging Raphael to a halt beside her. He turned, one eyebrow raised. "What is it? Why are you looking at me like that?" Angela's heart was racing, but not from fear, from something else entirely, something that felt like joy and disbelief tangled together in her chest. "Did you really just donate $10 million to charity, Raphael?" The words came out breathless, almost accusatory. "Why didn't you tell me this was your plan? On the flight, at dinner, you never said a word." That faint smile curved his lips as he stepped closer, closing the distance between them until she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. His thumb found her lower lip, tracing the soft curve with deliberate slowness that made her breath hitch. "Did you think I would let that money come between us?" His voice was low, intimate, meant only for her. "Did you think I cared about $10 million more than I care about you?" He pressed a soft kiss to her lips, gentle, reverent, a promise rather than a demand. When he pulled back, Angela's mind was still spinning, but one question burned brighter than the rest. "Raphael, what is the Fiori Education Foundation?" His smile widened as he began walking again, tugging her along by their joined hands with playful insistence. "Your scholarship fund," he said over his shoulder, "for young people who need help paying for their education." Angela stumbled, nearly tripping over her own feet as she hurried to keep pace with his long strides. "You created a foundation in my name." "I did." He squeezed her hand without slowing down. "It's your personal fund, Angela. You decide who receives scholarships, how the money is distributed, everything." He glanced back at her, ice blue eyes sparkling with something that looked almost like mischief. "Consider it a wedding gift." Angela's mouth fell open, but no words came out. A wedding gift. She was still processing those words when Raphael flagged down a taxi to take them back to their hotel. The flight back to New York felt different than the journey out, lighter somehow, as if the recycled cabin air itself had changed. Angela dozed against Raphael's shoulder for most of the trip, exhausted in the best possible way, and when the plane touched down at JFK, she felt like she was returning to a different life than the one she'd left behind. By the time the car pulled through the iron gates, the sun had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Angela noticed the changes immediately. The estate looked like something out of a winter fairy tale. A towering Christmas tree stood in the center of the front garden, wrapped in thousands of white lights that twinkled against the darkening sky. The entire front of the house was draped in white flowers, roses, lilies, orchids, cascading from every window, framing every doorway, while strings of golden lights traced the roofline and wrapped around the iron railings. "Raphael." Her voice trailed off as she took in the sight, her mind struggling to connect the dots. At the entrance, Oscar was engaged in what appeared to be a heated negotiation with a terrified-looking florist, his massive frame looming over the smaller man as he jabbed a finger at a bucket of white roses. "These aren't fresh enough," Oscar's voice carried across the driveway with unmistakable menace. "They're wilting. You see this?" He plucked a petal and held it up accusingly. "This is unacceptable for today." His hand moved to his hip, pushing back his jacket just enough to reveal the holster beneath. The florist's face went pale. "Of course, sir. We'll replace them immediately. Right away. No problem at all." Raphael approached from behind, placing a calming hand on Oscar's shoulder. "Stop terrorizing the florist, Oscar." Oscar turned, his expression shifting from intimidation to something almost sheepish. "Boss, the roses weren't—" "I heard." Raphael's tone was dry but affectionate. "I'm sure they'll be perfect now." Angela stood frozen on the driveway, her gaze sweeping over the transformed mansion, the flowers, the barely contained chaos of preparations happening around her. "Will someone please tell me what's going on?" Raphael took her hand and led her inside, past the grand staircase now adorned with white ribbons and candles, past Maria, who was arranging flowers in the foyer with tears already glistening in her eyes. He didn't stop until they reached the master bedroom. On the bed, laid out with careful precision, was a wedding dress. Simple, elegant, white silk that seemed to glow in the fading evening light. Angela's hand flew to her mouth, her legs suddenly unsteady beneath her. "Raphael." He moved behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders, his lips brushing against her ear as he spoke. "I'm going to give you the wedding of your dreams, Angela. Everything you've ever wanted, the dress, the venue, the guests, all of it." His grip tightened slightly. "But right now, today, I need you to become my wife." She turned in his arms, searching his face for explanation. "The Alessis," he continued, his expression hardening. "As long as you're Angela Fiori, you're vulnerable. A target they can use against me." His jaw tightened. "But the moment you become Angela Mancini, the moment you take my name, touching you becomes an act of war." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones with impossible tenderness. "Roman knows what that means. He knows that if he comes after my wife, every family allied with mine will respond. It won't be worth the cost." His forehead dropped to rest against hers. "This marriage, this quick ceremony today, it's the fastest way to protect you, to make you untouchable." Angela's breath came shallow and quick as she processed his words. "But I promise you," Raphael murmured, "in a few months, when the threat has passed, we'll have a real wedding, the one you deserve. You'll choose your own dress, plan every detail, invite everyone you've ever loved." That faint smile appeared, softening the intensity of his gaze. "And I'll get down on one knee again, in front of everyone, and give you a proposal you'll never forget." He reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. Inside, nestled against black silk, was the ring she'd rejected months ago, the same stunning diamond that had once represented everything she feared, now glittering with new meaning. He slid it onto her finger, and this time she didn't pull away. Angela stared at the ring, her emotions warring inside her chest, love and frustration, gratitude and something that felt uncomfortably like resentment. "I know you love me, Raphael." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I believe that now, but—" She met his eyes, forcing herself to hold his gaze. "I need something else from you, something that proves I truly belong in this life you're asking me to share." Her fingers twisted around the ring, feeling its weight. "I'm not asking for a big wedding or a perfect dress. I'm asking for a sign that I'll be safe with you, that this isn't just another gilded cage." She shook her head, struggling to articulate the feeling. "I don't know what it is, but I need you to give me something real, Raphael. Something that's just for me." His hands found her waist, pulling her flush against his chest with sudden intensity. "I know exactly what to give you, little dove." Before she could respond, his mouth was on hers, hungry, possessive, stealing her breath and her thoughts in equal measure. When they finally broke apart, Angela was trembling, her lips swollen, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Raphael, I need an answer." She pressed her palms against his chest, creating space between them. "You can't just kiss your way out of this conversation." "I know, little dove." His voice had dropped to something low and intimate, his eyes burning with an intensity that made her knees weak. He leaned down, his lips brushing against the shell of her ear as he whispered something that made her world tilt on its axis. Angela's lips parted in shock, her eyes going wide as the words registered. "Are you serious?" She pulled back to stare at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. "Is that real?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life, Angela." Joy exploded through her chest like fireworks, bright and overwhelming and impossible to contain. She threw her arms around his neck, pulling him down into a kiss that tasted like tears and laughter, and the beginning of something new. "I love you, Raphael Mancini." He held her tight, his face buried in her hair, and for a long moment neither of them moved. The small ceremony took place in the mansion's winter garden as twilight settled over the snow-dusted grounds outside. The glass-walled conservatory was filled with white flowers, roses, lilies, orchids, their perfume mixing with the warmth radiating from the stone fireplace at the far end of the room. Beyond the frosted windows, snowflakes drifted lazily through the darkening sky, but inside, candles flickered and the fire crackled softly, wrapping the space in golden light. Maria pressed a bouquet of white roses into Angela's trembling hands, her eyes glistening with tears. "Something for your hair," she whispered, tucking a delicate antique comb behind Angela's ear. "It belonged to his mother. He wanted you to have it." Angela's throat tightened. Raphael's mother. The woman who had died too young, whose loss had shaped the man he'd become. She walked toward Raphael on unsteady legs, wearing the simple silk dress he'd chosen for her, his mother's comb catching the candlelight with every step. Oscar and Miranda stood as witnesses, Oscar beside Raphael, Miranda beside Angela. As the ceremony began, Oscar's eyes filled with tears, the moisture gathering until it spilled over his scarred cheeks. Maria reached up to stroke his face with tender fingers, then slipped her arm through his, holding him steady. Miranda clutched her bouquet of white roses, grinning so wide her cheeks must have ached. "Do you, Angela Fiori, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Angela looked at Raphael, the man who had terrified her, protected her, and loved her in ways she was still learning to understand. "I do." "And do you, Raphael Mancini, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" That faint smile curved his lips. "I do." Raphael kissed her slow and deep, sealing their vows with a tenderness that made her eyes sting. When they broke apart, Oscar was openly sobbing, while Maria patted his arm and Miranda wiped at her own eyes. Angela Mancini. She turned to her husband and smiled. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The next morning in a penthouse across the city, Roman Alessi stared at the report in front of him. Rocco stood by the window, waiting. "The money's gone." Roman's voice was quiet, too quiet. $10 million, donated to charity. He looked up, disbelief flickering across his face. Every last cent. Rocco shifted his weight. "And the girl? Angela Fiori is Angela Mancini now." Roman's jaw tightened. "They got married last night." His fist slammed against the desk, rattling the decanter beside it. "How the hell did he move so fast?" The words came out like a growl. "We had eyes on her. We had a plan." Rocco stepped forward. "So we grab her. Wait till she's alone. Use her as leverage." Roman's head snapped up, his eyes cold enough to freeze the room. "Use your head, Rocco." Each word landed like a slap. "That money's gone. And if we touch Mancini's wife, his wife, we'll have every family in New York coming for us." He shook his head. "Nobody lets that slide, not even for us." Rocco's hands clenched at his sides. "So what? We just let him win?" "We wait." Roman leaned back in his chair, his expression settling into something patient and dangerous. "We find another angle." His fingers drummed against the desk. "Mancini thinks he's untouchable now, but every man's got a weakness." A cold smile crept across his lips. "I'll find his, and when I do, he'll pay." 4 months later, the grand wedding took place on a warm May evening in Manhattan. 500 guests, white orchids cascading from every surface, and Angela in a custom Vera Wang gown that made Raphael's breath catch when she walked down the aisle. Angela took over the pastry kitchen at Raphael's flagship restaurant, her cacio e pepe now legendary among the regulars. She had finally found her place, a partner building something real, and Raphael kept his promise. One by one, he began selling his restaurants, nightclubs, divesting from partnerships, stepping back from the shadows of his old life. The transition was slow, careful, deliberate, but it was happening. A new chapter, a clean slate. Together. Some stories end with a kiss, others end with a ring. This one ended with laughter, the kind that floated through tropical air, mingling with the sound of waves crashing against Caribbean shores, and a child's joyful shriek echoing across the garden. The house sat on a hillside overlooking the turquoise waters of St. Lucia, white walls draped in bougainvillea, a wraparound porch catching the morning breeze. It was modest by Mancini standards. No iron gates, no security cameras, no men in black suits patrolling the perimeter. Just a home. Their home. In the garden below, Raphael Mancini, former king of New York's underworld, was on his hands and knees in the grass, rolling a bright red ball toward a dark-haired toddler whose laughter rang out like bells. "Damien, catch it, buddy!" The boy, 2 years old, with his father's ice-blue eyes and his mother's stubborn chin, tumbled forward, grabbing the ball with chubby fingers and immediately putting it in his mouth. Maria walked up the garden path, pausing to stroke Damien's dark curls and wave at Raphael before climbing the porch steps. She knocked on the front door, one hand resting on the pronounced curve of her belly. Angela flung the door open, already in motion, wiping flour from her hands onto her apron. "Maria, come in, come in." She pulled her inside and pressed a quick kiss to her cheek. "I put Damien's milk in the refrigerator, formula's on the counter." Her words tumbled out in a rush as she grabbed her bag from the hook by the door. "I have a crazy day at work. 10 special order cakes to make before dinner service." Angela's eyes lingered on Maria's swollen stomach. 7 months along now, glowing with that particular radiance that came from carrying new life. Maria's lips curved into a mischievous smile. "Make it 11. This baby is craving your pastries something terrible, and I refuse to suffer alone." Warmth spread through Angela's chest as laughter bubbled up, light and easy. 11 it is! The back door swung open, and Raphael stepped inside, Damien perched on his hip, still gnawing contentedly on the red ball. He handed the boy to Maria's waiting arms, dropping a kiss on his son's forehead. "Oscar's waiting," he said, then crossed to Angela and pulled her close. His lips found hers, soft at first, then deeper, tasting of coffee and the mango they'd shared for breakfast. When he pulled back, his thumb traced her jawline with familiar tenderness. "Let us drop you off at the pastry shop, sweetheart." Angela's fingers curled into the fabric of his linen shirt as she kissed him again, longer this time, slower, savoring the warmth of him against her. "I'll take my bike, my love," she murmured against his mouth. "The ride clears my head before the rush." Raphael's eyes darkened in that way that still made her pulse quicken after all this time. He pressed one more kiss to her forehead and headed for the door. "Raphael!" she called after him as he walked toward Oscar's waiting jeep. "What time are you closing the restaurant tonight?" He paused on the garden path, turning back with that signature smile, the one that had once made powerful men tremble and now made her heart flutter like a teenager's. "Whatever time you want, little dove." Oscar was leaning against the battered blue Wrangler, sand on the floorboards and a fishing rod strapped to the roof rack, a far cry from the armored SUVs of their former life. "Good morning, boss," Oscar said, as Raphael climbed into the passenger seat. Raphael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Oscar, stop calling me boss. We've talked about this. I don't want Angela reminded of the old days." Oscar nodded seriously as he pulled out of the driveway onto the winding coastal road. "Okay, boss. Understood. Let Angela keep thinking we're a normal, modest family." His massive hands gripped the steering wheel as they passed a fruit stand where an elderly woman waved at them like old friends. "Meanwhile, we have millions of dollars sitting in the bank, and we're about to go negotiate fish prices with local fishermen so we can pick the best catch for our restaurant and serve dinner to our customers tonight." He shook his head slowly, something between disbelief and complaint creeping into his voice. "There hasn't been a single bar fight since we moved here, not one. This normal life is a little boring, isn't it?" His shoulders slumped. "I don't feel powerful anymore, boss. Not even a little." Raphael didn't answer immediately. The jeep rounded a curve, and through the palm trees he caught a glimpse of their house on the hillside, white walls glowing in the morning sun, the garden where he'd just been playing with his son. Angela's laughter drifted down to them on the salt-tinged breeze, bright and carefree, as she said goodbye to Maria on the porch. That faint smile, his signature smile, curved Raphael's lips as he watched her. "Everyone used to fear me," he said quietly, his gaze still fixed on the woman in the garden. "Men crossed the street when they saw me coming. Deals were made or broken on my word alone. I had more power than most people could imagine." He turned to face Oscar, and there was something in his ice-blue eyes, something settled, certain, completely at peace. Now, someone calls me Papa. His voice softened. And someone else calls me husband. And no power on earth can compete with that. Oscar was quiet for a long moment. Then he cleared his throat. Boss, I have to tell you something. He stared straight ahead at the road, his scarred face unusually serious. Maria made me promise. When the baby comes, she wants me to do the night feedings. Raphael raised an eyebrow. And she said if I complain even once, she'll tell her mother. Oscar's voice dropped to something approaching horror. Her mother, boss. The woman who still calls me the big one who eats too much after 3 years. Raphael laughed. A real laugh. The kind that had been rare in his old life and came easily now. Welcome to marriage, Oscar. I used to make men disappear. Oscar shook his head slowly, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. Now I'm terrified of a 5'2" Italian grandmother. The jeep continued down the coastal road, carrying 2 men who'd once ruled through fear toward a life measured in fish prices and dinner reservations and the small, ordinary miracles of love. Because in the end, true power wasn't about having nothing left to lose, it was about having a life worth protecting. And sometimes, giving up power was the most powerful thing a man could do. And that's where we leave Angela and Raphael, not with an ending, but with a beginning. Thank you so much for waiting for part 2 and for sticking with this story all the way to the end. I really hope it was worth the wait. I'd love to hear what you think. Drop a yes in the comments if the ending satisfied you, or a no if it didn't. Be honest, I can take it. And hey, believe in love, okay? The real kind, the messy, complicated, terrifying kind that changes everything. I can't wait to see you in my next story. Oh, and speaking of next stories, I have a little surprise for you. Remember Bambi, Lily and Nico? Their part 2 drops next week. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Now hit that like button if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon.